It's Friday and the Pac-12 is kicking off game day weekend with Cal versus Oregon. But before all the games get going, I'm giving you this week's Pac-12 rankings. Washington State makes a big leap in this week's rankings, while Stanford takes a tumble to the bottom after scoring the least amount of points in a major loss to ASU. All in today's episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in and making Locked On Pac-12 podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Cindy Robinson, former Pac-12 student athlete and ESPN social media specialist. It's Friday, TGIF. That's probably the best part about today, the end of the week. But on top of that, we get to have some college football this weekend. And before we get into the game versus Cal versus Oregon tonight, I wanted to provide you all with the weekly rankings because, it's the end of the week and I have to show how the teams did last week, okay? Just a quick reminder that these rankings are based off the performances from last week. It's not an indicator of the standings of the Pac-12 right now. It's solely just based off of performance from week to week, okay? And with the last weekend providing another slate of chaotic matchups, these rankings are all over the place. Cal, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington will be left out of the rankings since they all had bye weeks last weekend. But the other 8 teams will be lined up, and we're going to kick things off with who comes in at that top spot. And I think it's pretty obvious just based off the performances from the week. If you were paying attention to college football, if you were listening throughout the week about, how we talked about how each team did, it is the ASU Sun Devils, okay? The Sun Devils are the most consistent team in the conference right now. They're one of 2 teams still undefeated amongst other Pac-12 teams. They've been scoring an average of 35 points per game against conference opponents and averaging a 19.6 point deficit against those same Pac-12 opponents. So ASU is on fire right now. They're looking like the clear favorite to win the Pac-12 South and possibly the Pac-12 overall. Now, the matchup versus Utah this weekend is another important game for the Sun Devils in their quest for a Pac-12 title. Each week we've said how important each game is for them. So it was really important for them to play against Stanford, UCLA, and now Utah. All of these will truly help them in this fight for the Pac-12 South title. I think right now Utah might be the one team that can stand in their way for this. And so this game will be truly important for both teams. And we'll get into why it's important for Utah later. Coming in at number 2, though, that second spot goes to my Washington State Cougars, okay? WSU lands at number 2 for the strong performance against an almost unstoppable Oregon State run game, okay? Oregon State's been killing the Pac-12, killing their opponents with their run game. Despite the Beavers rushing for a total of 311 yards, the Cougars were able to grab the 31-24 victory by outscoring Oregon State 14-7 in the third and fourth quarter, okay? So that second half, Washington State just stepped it up another level, okay, and then just took off with it. WSU QB Jaden Delora threw for 399 yards and 3 touchdowns, while the defense held Chance Nolan to just 11 completions for 158 yards and intercepted him twice, okay? So Washington State's defense has been working nonstop. This is their second game from as far as Pac-12 play goes that they won back-to-back. Cal was before them. They did lose to Utah and USC, but right now it seems like they're turning a leaf and making some changes in their offense and defense to be more competitive, okay? The Cougars will have another challenge this weekend with Stanford coming to the Palouse. It's going to be tough, okay? I will say that this win against Oregon State definitely gave the Cougars the confidence they needed going into the rest of the conference play. Now, at this point, there's really no need to fear anybody. It shows that they can play with the best, they can compete, and they can win. So I'm looking forward to seeing Washington State face Stanford, hoping that that home field advantage comes to their rescue, I'll say, against Stanford, but a lot less fearful when it comes to facing Stanford now that they have taken down Oregon State. Coming up next, we will continue with the rankings and giving you all the details about why each team landed where they landed, okay? Don't be mad at me. I'm just reporting the facts, okay? For those of you that may be looking for a new protein bar, though, Built Bar is the one for you, okay? It is a tasty alternative tasty and healthy alternative to your everyday candy bar. First and foremost, it comes in 9 delicious flavors. They range from coconut almond. If you're into fruitier flavors, they have cherry and raspberry. And then for my chocolate lovers, they definitely have you covered with peanut butter brownie, mint brownie, double salted caramel, all the flavors you could think of when it comes to chocolate. On the good side is if you're interested in trying them all, there's a mix box with 2 of each of the 9 flavors, so you can try everything. Now, not only are Built Bars the best tasting, but they're healthy too. They have about 17 to 18 grams of protein. They're low in calories, low in sugar, and low in net carbs. So amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy. You can go to BuiltBar.com and use your promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your first order at Built Bar. That's BuiltBar.com. Use LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your first order. Okay, so I got to give a quick shout out to you, the fan, for listening, making Pac-12, Locked On Pac-12 podcast your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms, so definitely keep listening and tuning in as we continue to give you everything you need to hear about the Conference of Champions. Now, speaking of Conference of Champions, we're heading into the 3rd spot on this ranking list, and Utah comes in at that 3rd spot, just for their inspiring performance against USC at the Coliseum, okay? It's their first win versus USC in the Coliseum in over 100 years. And I think to be exact, it's 105 years. So just on that level right there, it's a historic game for Utah, very historic win. On top of that, they were playing with a little more motivation as, you know, they just lost their teammate Aaron Lowe to senseless gun violence just 2 weeks ago. And at this point, it was very clear that they were playing for a higher purpose, and they definitely showed up and showed out. From the start of the game, Utah took control. They outscored the Trojans in the first 3 quarters. And Utah's quarterback, Cam Rising, put on a great show with 22 of 28 completions, 306 yards, and 3 passing touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown in there too. And it wasn't until the 4th quarter did we even see USC try to revive their game with 2 touchdowns followed by 2 two-point conversions. But it was too late at that point. Utah did their damage and, you know, just really came in there and changed the narrative behind Utah and USC's rivalry at this point. Utah will look to disrupt the South and take down the Sun Devils as ASU heads to Salt Lake City this weekend, okay? These 2 teams are the only ones left undefeated against Pac-12 opponents this season. And after this weekend, there will only be one. And I do think that might become an indicator of who might take the Pac-12 South, but it also might come down like towards the end of the season that like whoever took this game might edge out that other opponent for the Pac-12 South title. So this is an important game, again, for ASU, but also Utah as well. We'll definitely be keeping our eyes on that game and keeping you up to date on the Locked On Pac-12 Twitter as the game is happening. That's LO_Pac-12. I'm going to be tweeting, live tweeting, watching the games, and giving you, you know, updates regularly. So if you can't watch the game, I got your back on the updates, okay? Also, you can follow Locked On Utes. They'll be tweeting during the game too. That's at Locked On Utes. That'll be Brian Brown and Jake Hatch. They got you, giving you all the details you need about that game against ASU. And honestly, you can follow Locked On Sun Devils at LO_Sun Devils as well, because I know that Richie and Connor will be live tweeting as well throughout that game and giving you just all the updates you need to keep up with what's happening, okay? Coming in at that number 4 spot is UCLA, okay? They're coming in at number 4 on the rankings this week. They're the last team out of the winning teams, on this ranking list, because their win was, not as great as the other ones. I'll say that. What was supposed to be an easier game for them versus Arizona started off a bit closer than anyone expected, okay? Arizona trailed by just 1 point. It was 14-13 as that game went into the half, giving the Bruins a real reason to be worried, okay? Because as we all know, Arizona is winless still at this point, and going up against them as an opponent, you kind of just have in your mindset that this is a must win, okay? You can't be the team that loses to the team that hasn't won a game yet this season or in the last 17 games, okay? So, yeah, it was serious. The Wildcats held DTR, that's UCLA's quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, to just 82 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and then an interception, okay? Not the best game for the Bruins star QB in the air, but he did make up for it on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns. And then running back Britton Brown helped the Bruins seal the win in the 4th quarter with a 48-yard touchdown run. He had a strong impact on the game as well. He rushed for 146 yards throughout the game. And so it's one thing that we know is that UCLA continues to have a strong run game. And that ultimately is what kept Arizona from winning this game. There's a few other things that they struggle with, but we'll talk about that more when we get to where they are in the rankings for last week. UCLA will face a Washington team coming off of a bye week and fully rested up in Seattle this Saturday. So that may not be an easy win for UCLA, but it is a win that they need to get, okay? Coming in at number 5 is Oregon State. So they definitely dropped in the rankings this week. They've been undefeated. They find themselves towards the bottom of the pack this week because they ended their undefeated streak against conference opponents with a loss to Washington State, okay? Tied with the Cougars 3 different times throughout the game. The Beavers were unable to capitalize and stop the Cougars from scoring. Not once did the Beavers take the lead in the second half, giving the Cougars all the confidence they needed to seal the win. Oregon State, they have been a force to be reckoned with. Their run game has been phenomenal. They've been, killing opponents with that run game. And Washington State found a way to secure a win. And I do think that was probably one of the most shocking wins of the weekend. But it also opened some people's eyes to what Washington State is actually working on up there and trying to accomplish this season. Oregon State will actually take a week off and get their rest this weekend as they have a bye, and they'll prepare to redeem themselves next week in a matchup against the Utah Utes, okay? And depending on how Utah plays against ASU, that game could be a crucial one for the Oregon State. So they definitely should be watching Utah play this weekend and, resting up as much as they can to make sure they're all healthy and prepared for that matchup. Still to come, we have 3 more teams to figure out where they land in this weekly ranking and discuss the previews of this weekend coming up, okay? For those of you that are heavily into betting, BetOnline.ag is where you need to go, okay? We are back in live action on the gridiron. Football, college football, pro football is back, and BetOnline is your number 1 spot for all your bets this season, okay? With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be your number 1 source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, baseball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available to you for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, so coming in at number 6, it is Arizona Wildcats, and they land in the 6th spot instead of dead last, despite still having a winless record because of their play, okay? While they continue to lose, the skill has improved, and we've seen them actually competing with these teams that we probably would have expected them to blow out Arizona. And so UCLA and Oregon are both teams that Arizona played against pretty well. We've seen glimpses of hope for this team. They're still shooting themselves in the foot. They committed way too many penalties in this game against UCLA. It was 12, which is the most that they've had since 2018. And then they settled for too many red zone field goals, okay? The problem here is we need to see more touchdowns, and we need to see more third down conversions from Arizona. Unfortunately, quarterback Jordan McLeod, the player that seemed to give the Wildcats a glimmer of hope, got injured early in the 4th quarter against UCLA. And so he will not be playing against who do they play this weekend? Colorado. He will not be playing against Colorado this weekend. Instead, they'll have to rely on Gunnar Cruz to possibly get their first win in 17 games. So if they are going to secure a win, Colorado would be the team for them to secure it against, but they will be playing Colorado in Colorado. And, when you're away, games are a little tougher, but we have seen Arizona put up a good fight, and I do anticipate seeing that same thing happen this weekend. Coming in at number 7 is the USC Trojans, okay? They come in behind Arizona after taking a big L at home against Utah, okay? We talked about that when I was explaining Utah, and the major thing here is, I have to repeat it. They lost to Utah, a team that has not been able to beat them in the Coliseum in over 100 years. So that was a very historic win for Utah, a historic loss for USC. Despite Keaton Slovis passing for 401 yards and 2 touchdowns, the Trojans could not hold off the Utes. It could have been Utah's motivation being inspired by, losing their teammate, or maybe just wanting to break that terrible record of losing over 100 years in the Coliseum. But whatever the case was, the Trojans' defense was no match for the Utes. USC also committed 8 penalties against Utah, which definitely, played a factor in that loss. The Trojans will actually take a break this weekend, so they have their bye week, and they'll get prepared for their next matchup, which will be next weekend against Notre Dame. I do think that their bye week is coming at a perfect time for them. Coming off that loss versus Utah, it's already a blow to the ego. Their season has been very up and down. Every other week they're winning, they're losing. It's all over the place, and it's very chaotic. Notre Dame is one of their long-standing rivals, and they actually will be headed to Indiana to play Notre Dame, which can be tough, in their territory. But on top of that, everything going on with USC, this is the time that they need to figure out how to pull off a win. And I'm hoping that Dante Williams, head coach, the interim head coach right now, is able to figure it out and get the formula, because this is not a game that Trojan fans like to see USC lose at all. And then rounding out the weekly rankings at number 8 is Stanford, okay? And I know you're wondering why Stanford came dead last in these rankings, considering they played the toughest opponent and, they had the toughest assignment versus ASU in Tempe. Well, I'm going to tell you why. The Cardinal allowed the Sun Devils to hold them to just 10 points, okay? Stanford's quarterback, Tanner McKee, who before this game had not thrown 1 interception at all, threw not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions versus ASU, okay? That is ridiculous. McKee to Elijah Higgins was the lone touchdown for Stanford in this matchup, as they went scoreless in the second and fourth quarter, okay? Stanford has a chance to redeem themselves this week against the Cougars as they head up north to play in the Palouse, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as they may think it may be. And they may not even think it may be that easy considering how well Washington State played. So I know they're probably going into this as it's going to be a challenge for them. And with as much as they have on the line, they're going to want to get this win. But I do think that Washington State is going to make them work for it for sure. So I'm excited about this week's matchups. For those teams that are having the bye weeks, they definitely need them. Rest up, get ready for the rest of conference play. And yeah, if you want to follow along this weekend with college football, Pac-12 football specifically, and you may not be able to watch or you just want to engage on Twitter, go ahead and follow Locked On Pac-12 Podcast on Twitter at LO_Pac12. You can follow me at _Cindy Robinson. And then thank you so much for making this one of your first listens of the day. Locked On Pac-12 Podcast is free and available on all platforms for you. Now, you made this your first listen. Go ahead and make one of our other conference shows your second listen of the day. That's Locked On SEC, Locked On Big 12, and Locked On ACC. Some great experts there, some great updates and info for the other conferences. If you're just interested in college football, period, or college basketball is getting ready to start right around the corner, they have it all for you, okay? So go ahead and check those out. And other than that, make sure you stay locked on Pac-12 on the Locked On Network.